Have a seat, everyone, please. Good afternoon. My name is Pam Pepper, and I am the Chief Judge for the District Court. And it is my extreme honor and unspeakable pleasure to welcome all of you to this event this afternoon. Some people are not happy to be here. Most of us are, though. For context, the last time that we had a gathering like this was in August of 2019, when bankruptcy judge, the new bankruptcy judge, Katie Perhatch, was sworn in as our newest judge. A lot of water under the bridge since then. Some of it not so happy. It would be lovely if we had Judge Shapiro sitting up here with us, but we don't, and we all miss him greatly. But in the interim, some good things have happened. And among those good things are the fact that we have three, I shouldn't say new, right? New is not the right word. None of you are new judges. You are experienced jurists all at this point. But we have three additions to our court family. The psalmist tells us that weeping may last for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. Good morning. This is a joyful, joyful thing. So we welcome our new colleagues today. Again, not new. Judge Dries has been on the bench since April of 2020, Judge Ludwig since September of 2020, and even Judge Blise, the baby among us, has been on the bench since March of 21. Thank you all for coming and participating in this amazing occasion. And I would now like to turn it over to my colleague, Chief Judge Mike Halfinger, who is going to act as our MC and Master of Ceremonies. It'll be funny.
Well, thank you, Chief Judge Pepper, and let me join Chief Judge Pepper in welcoming Chief Judge Sykes, Chief Judge Pepper, all my colleagues on the District Court, and all of colleagues from elsewhere, esteemed members of the State Supreme Court, Court of Appeals, and Circuit Court, many, many friends, and we're all glad to be here. So when Judge Ludwig came to me to ask me if I wanted to be the MC, I was like, well, what does that obligate me to do? And as best I could tell, really my only obligation was to keep things moving. And I noted that when we were doing the walkthrough that there was no orchestra. So I was concerned because what if someone goes on too long? There's no orchestra to cue, to cut them off. Like Dave Simon, what if he goes on too long? That's why I brought this. If need be, there will be music to bring discussion to an end. So before I turn it over to Chief Judge Sykes, I did make one observation. I'm sure this isn't just troubling me. I'm sure this is troubling many of you, which is one looks at the program and one looks at the order in which these events are going to happen, and one wonders, what is the organizing principle? The federal courts, after all, are a hierarchy. And yet, District Court Judge Ludwig is not first. Well, maybe it's alphabetical order. But Bankruptcy Judge Blise is last. Maybe it's reverse alphabetical order by the last letter of their last name. That seems highly unlikely. Maybe it's the random drawing of poker chips. That's an organizing principle that some use. But indeed, it's none of those. Expressing perhaps the collegiality that this court has. The organizing principle is the order in which each of the judicial officers took their current position. So that's why Judge Dries is first, Judge Ludwig is second, and Judge Blise is last. And so having shed light on that, maybe I was the only one confused, who knows, and at the risk of having to play the trombone on myself, I now turn it over to Chief Judge Sykes for the administration of the oath of office.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Rachel Blise,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will administer justice
that I will administer justice
without respect to persons
without respect to persons
and do equal right
and do equal right
to the poor and the rich,
to the poor and the rich,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
and that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge and perform
discharge and perform
all the duties
all the duties
incumbent upon me
incumbent upon me
as district judge,
As District Judge,
magistrate judge, and bankruptcy
as
judge
bankruptcy judge
under the Constitution and laws
under the Constitution and laws
of the United States.
of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
And with that, I turn it over to Judge Griesbach for some remarks on Magistrate Judge Dries.
thank you, Judge Helfinger. Good afternoon, everyone. I asked about a hook or turning off a mic, and I was told that would not be done, but I'll try to keep this short so it wouldn't be necessary. I've been asked to offer a few remarks on this occasion of the investiture of Magistrate Judge Stephen Dries. I've not been asked by Judge Dries, however. If he had his way, this formal event would not be taking place, or at least he would not be a part of it. Such is the humility of our newest magistrate judge. But because the importance of the occasion demands a public ceremony, he has acquiesced, or in any event, he is here. And because I was there at the beginning and have spent the most time working with Steve during his federal career, it has fallen on me to offer some remarks about him. Magistrate Judge Dries was one of the first law clerks I hired when I came on the bench in 2002. Serving as a law clerk for a federal judge, even a lowly district court judge in the northern outpost in Green Bay, is a very highly sought-after goal for many law school graduates. This became even more clear to me as I began receiving applications for the position soon after I was nominated. As I began reading the applications that came into my chambers, the quality of the candidates became apparent. It has dawned on me more than once since that time, but at that time as well, that I would not even hire myself over some of the people that apply for a law clerk position, and Steve's application was one of those. Steve grew up in the Milwaukee area, just northeast of the iconic Gillies frozen custard stand, where he notes you could ingest a week's worth of calories in a single gulp and then order a chocolate malt for the walk home. He attended Marquette University High School, and then, apparently impressed with the Jesuits, he attended Georgetown University, where he studied history, Latin, philosophy, economics, and theology. He also did a year at the London School of Economics. Armed with a degree in liberal arts, he did what many of us did in his position back then. He went to law school. Steve graduated magna cum laude from the University of Wisconsin Law School, where he was the articles editor in the Law Review. Most importantly, as he has informed us, he met his wife Carrie in law school. Carrie is also a graduate of the UW Law School, and if memory serves, they have been married 18 years now. Together, they are the proud parents of Luke, who, aged 12, has plenty of time to decide whether to follow the path of his parents. Steve started out thinking he was going to be a corporate lawyer. In law school, he took courses in corporations, business transactions, tax and securities law, and he began his career in 2001 at Jenner & Block in Chicago, where he had also worked as a summer associate. As Steve put it later in a profile that the Eastern District Bar Association newsletter put out, his timing was in retrospect excellent. Excellent, that is, if you were never meant to be a corporate lawyer. Here's how he described it. The dot-com bubble had burst, the economy was in tatters, this was, of course, right after 9/11, and there was a dearth of work for a young corporate lawyer. It was like the whole world had conspired to tell me, this job isn't really for you. It was at that point that I entered the story. Fresh on the bench, I hired Steve as my first law clerk for a 2-year term in June of 2002. He was so good at the job that I recommended him for a position with Judge Sykes when she left the Wisconsin Supreme Court and joined the Seventh Circuit. Judge Sykes offered him the position, and before he left, as he was completing the second year of his term with me, the question arose if I would consider having Steve come back as a career clerk. Up until that time, I had not considered hiring a career clerk, of having someone continue in that job indefinitely. I had served as a law clerk on the state Supreme Court for a year after I graduated from law school, and had then served 2 years as a staff attorney for the Seventh Circuit. Based on that experience, I shared Dean Kearney's view that judicial clerkships were for newly minted law school graduates and that judges could contribute greatly to the profession and the legal community by offering that experience to as many young lawyers as possible. But that was before I encountered the heavy and diverse caseload of a federal district judge. In an influential 2007 article, U.S. District Judge D. Brock Hornby wrote, "In the 21st century, the federal district court's primary role in civil cases has become law exposition, fact sorting, and case management, office tasks more than umpiring trials. Legislative efforts to provide a federal remedy to more and more of the problems brought to public attention, while at the same time discouraging frivolous prisoner lawsuits, limiting federal review of state convictions, and minimizing abusive federal litigation has led to greater and greater procedural complexity in an ever-expanding caseload. That increasing and complex caseload has made the position of a career clerk seem almost essential for most district judges. Of course, not everyone would want to work as a career clerk, where you essentially get little to no credit for all your hard work. And I suggested to Steve, against my own interests, that he might be better off building his own career. But he explained that he truly enjoyed the work, and by that time I had realized what most of my colleagues already knew, that having an experienced clerk with institutional practical knowledge of the court and the various issues we deal with on a daily basis allowed far more efficiency in the management and disposition of cases. So we agreed we'd give it a try, and if either of us grew tired of it, we'd give notice and go our separate ways. When I was thinking about what I would say about Steve's attributes, his work today, the saying that came to my mind was, "Actions speak louder than words." And the action I had in mind was the fact that I kept him on for 12 years after he returned to my chambers, including 10 years on the Fox River cleanup, one of the largest Superfund cases in the country. That stint says more clearly than anything else I could say about my respect for his intelligence, writing ability, and work habits. Steve left my chambers to become the clerk of court, where my colleagues and the other members of the court family had an opportunity to see the qualities that had won him so much admiration and so endeared him to those of us in Green Bay. During the 3 fiscal years in which he was the clerk of court, Steve sent some $300,000 in taxpayer funds back to Washington, all the while keeping the office's productivity high and staff levels lean and efficient. This left some of us thinking that with more united executives like Steve in the federal government, we might not have a deficit. In any event, after almost 3 years as the clerk of court, Steve followed the path of a number of former career law clerks who had become clerks of their courts, such as Peter Oppenier in our neighboring district to the west, and also the Chief Judge of the Southern District of Illinois, Nancy Rosenstengel, and he applied for a seat on the bench when Magistrate Judge David Jones resigned. As Judge Pepper said, Chief Judge Pepper stated in a press release announcing his appointment, Steve was one of 5 finalists chosen by the merit selection panel out of 36 applicants. Though reluctant to lose him as a clerk, the judges chose Steve after a second round of interviews, and he has been serving in that position since April 8th of 2020. The judges of the district fully recognize their responsibility to appoint the best possible candidates to the position of magistrate judge. It is essential both to the public and the bar, especially in a district like ours, where magistrate judges are directly assigned cases and perform so many of the same functions as the Article III judges perform, that we appoint the best possible candidates to that position. I am confident that we have done that in appointing Stephen C. Dries as our newest magistrate judge, and wish him a long and successful career. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Griesbach. And with that, we will have the presentation of the robe to Judge Dries by Carrie and Luke Dries, who we've already heard about. Judge Dries.
You just proved yourself because you can dress yourself. That's good.
Why, what have you heard? I think we could have used the trombone a little bit on that, those last remarks. You were all thinking that, weren't you?
It is a hierarchical system.
It is, yes. So contrary to what Judge Griesbach just suggested, I've actually been looking forward to this day for a long time. You see that now I'm officially sworn in, I can tell some of you what I really think of you. We're trying to keep this moving here, but you'll indulge me if I spend a few minutes thanking a few people. First of all, Judge Griesbach, you could go 1,000 years and not find a better mentor in the law and in life. I was really lucky to find him. Also to Judge Sykes, she's the paragon of what we call modern judicial writing. We use her decisions as the model that we try to copy. So thank you to both of you. There's a handful of people in this room right now. I won't name names, but you know who you are. When this position became available, you came to visit me or you called me, and you suggested that I apply for the position. That was very moving to me. You know, it's easy to think about it in your head and think, I could do this, but to have other people tell you that you could do this, I still remember those conversations 3 years later. So thank you guys for that. Judge Pepper, thank you for your heroic leadership during the pandemic, what I hope was the worst of the pandemic. Thank you also to my excellent law clerks, Aaron and Allie and Jeremy. We are a collaborative office, and that's what makes this such a great job. I learned from them, and they learned from me, I hope. The clerk's office, you people survived my 3-year reign of terror as your clerk of court. I love you guys. Thank you for doing such a great job. And then I want to focus quickly on my family. That's where I really hit the jackpot. Even my in-laws are fantastic. I see some of you right out here. I don't know how you got past security, but but my parents, Bob and Mary Pat, are over there in the front row. They're in the Parenting Hall of Fame. They don't like to brag about it, but it's true. Imagine if you raise 3 kids until adulthood, and the one who becomes a judge is the least accomplished of all your children. That's my life. I'm the black sheep of my family. My sister Laura, wave to everybody, Laura. She's here from Madison. She saves people's lives. She runs a charity in the Andes Mountains in South America that provides medical care to people who really need it. My other sister writes TV shows that are seen by millions of people. So thank you for being such great role models to my family. Last, there's my own little family whom you just saw. There's Luke, who's 12 on a good day. He seems to have appointed himself to be the one responsible for keeping me grounded. He's never shy about telling me that I'm the worst dad ever. Sometimes I'm upgraded to the worst dad in the world. And he doesn't laugh at my jokes. He says I'm never funny, which is demonstrably untrue. But it's very important to be grounded if you're trying to be a good judge. So thank you, Luke, for that. And then speaking of keeping me grounded, there's my wife, the lovely Carrie Weber. Like many men, I somehow managed to marry someone who's stronger and smarter and much better looking than I am. And as Judge Griesbach mentioned, it's been 18 years we've been married. I know it's 18 years because at the end of every evening, she writes a big X on the calendar, marking the days as though she's serving some sort of sentence or something. But anyway, thank you most to her for her love and her endless patience with me. I did happen to procure some flowers for her. I'll bring them over in a second. But in the spirit of keeping things moving, as my mother would say, it's getting dangerously close to cocktail hour. So with that, I'll turn it back over to our wonderful MC. Thank you, everyone.
And with that, we switch the focus. I'm going to call to the podium my good friend and former colleague, Dave Simon, to make some hopefully pointed remarks about Judge Ludwig.
Thank you, Judge. You can always hope. Good afternoon. I had the privilege of standing at this podium 5 years ago to introduce you to my good friend and partner, Brett Ludwig, when he was in his investiture for the bankruptcy court. And I actually have proof. Some of you who are there will remember the opening day glass from Judge Ludwig's last investiture. I think a lot of people in this audience were in attendance at that event, and they had an opportunity to learn all about Brett, his journey from Colby, Wisconsin to these hallowed halls, his storied career in private practice, his hobbies and personal foibles, and his wonderful family. So we're not going to cover all of that again. Obviously, a lot has happened since then. As I predicted, Judge Ludwig served with distinction on the bankruptcy court, putting quickly to rest some of the doubts about the fact that he had never been a bankruptcy lawyer or perhaps never read the bankruptcy code before that moment, showing his keen intellect, his impressive work ethic, his humility, and his fundamental sense of fairness on the bench. Judge Ludwig became exactly the kind of judge we promised he would be at his last investiture. Things got more interesting quickly thereafter when former President Trump appointed Judge Ludwig to the district court on March 3rd, 2020. As most of you know, this was a seat that Judge Randa was empty since Judge Randa had taken senior status in 2016. Some history buffs in the room may remember there were some events that happened in March of 2020 that kind of threw everything off. But somehow Brett managed to get confirmed by the Senate during a COVID pandemic and a lockdown, and was confirmed on September 9th, 2020, commissioned in a private ceremony on September 10th, 2020, and basically went to work in his way. So it's a little different giving an investiture speech 2 years into a judge's tenure. Usually you can just kind of gush and promise and predict, sort of like I did in 2017. But this is the modern age, and now we have data. And I see some of the judges are looking a little uncomfortable. There's a lot of data out there on you. And Alexa is, in fact, listening to your conversations, and there's AI being applied to determine how you're going to decide cases. So it is a very different world. Anyway, it's probably a good time to do sort of like like in law firms, we do these 360-degree reviews of performance. So it's probably a good time to do that for Judge Ludwig. According to LexisNexis, there have been 429 civil cases before Judge Ludwig since he took the bench. 125 of those are currently open, and 304 have been terminated, which seems like pretty good work. Employment, consumer protection, civil rights, insurance, product liability are the leaders in terms of the types of civil cases. I'm not sure how meaningful this stat is, but given his short tenure on the court, but LexisNexis reports an average of just over 300 days from filing to termination of a case, which also strikes me as pretty good. And it also reports 100% affirmation rate by the Seventh Circuit, which Brett tells me may not be correct, but we're going to go with it because it says it on LexisNexis. So my high school geometry teacher, Father Kelly, always says, you know, figures never lie, but liars sometimes figure. So we'll dispense with the stats. I think we've all been able to see what kind of judge Brett Ludwig is, and it's exactly what those of us who have known him for many years expected. He does his job. He does his best to get it right. He does not let his personal views get in the way of coming to the decision that the law requires. He applies the rules that generations of lawyers learned from our friend and colleague Tom Schreiner, which is read the rule, go to the original source, read the statute, think hard, and get it right. And Brett does all those things. Brett works hard, he keeps his docket moving, he understands the importance to the litigants from a trial court of getting a decision. He's level-headed, he's even-tempered, he's surprisingly patient, and as smart as they come. And perhaps more importantly, he treats everybody with respect. His colleagues on the court, the litigants before him, the lawyers who appear before him, his courtroom staff who seem to really like working for him, and the courthouse staff. So this community is really, really lucky to have Judge Ludwig on the bench. And Brett is actually really, really lucky to be standing on the shoulders of giants. As I mentioned before, Brett is the immediate successor to Judge Randa. And I should note that Mrs. Randa is here today, and we're really delighted to see you and appreciate it. And I know Brett appreciates you being here. You're always a member of the federal family, and we're grateful to have you here. And then I was recently reminded that Judge Randa's seat came through my former judge, and some of the others, there's others of you in this room who are former Judge Robert Warren clerks, who was one of the absolute legends of this building and one of the greatest men I've ever known in my life. So, Brett, you've got a lot, you've got big shoes to fill, but I do think you show the same fundamental decency, good cheer, and excellent judging that your predecessors showed. And I think they're probably both looking down and pleased that you're continuing the tradition.
Statistics. That just goes to show the kind of damage that can be done when a perfectly fine lawyer goes to business school. And with that, we turn to the presentation of the robe to Judge Ludwig by his wife, Melissa Blydorn, and his son, Luke. Ryan. Wow. You wouldn't think I'd mess that up, but there you go. Ryan, my apologies. Yeah. I don't even recognize him anymore, but that's an aside. Judge Ludwig's remark, I'm going to go hide somewhere and stay out of the line of fire.
You hope.
thing zipped up.
Yeah, Dries did better than you at dressing himself.
I'm not even going to respond to that. So may it please the court. Thank you all for coming and sharing in this combined investiture ceremony. Thanks to the chief judges, all the district bankruptcy and magistrate judges, state court colleagues. Congratulations to Rachel and Steve and their families. It's an honor to be part of the same court family as the two of you. Special thanks also to friends and family that are gathered in the gallery. I appreciate everyone making time to share in today's ceremony. So there are hopefully some people watching on live stream too, and thank you for taking time to watch. Thanks also to members of the bar, former colleagues at Foley and Lardner, baby school judge classmates, Judge Kim, Judge Ayler, coming from Indiana and Georgia, neighbors, friends from the Milwaukee Rowing Club, law school friends, friends from Northwestern Mutual Life, and also many past and current members of my chambers team from bankruptcy court and from the district court. As Dave alluded to, I stand on I have some big shoes to fill. I have the honor of being the 12th judge to occupy my seat on the district court bench here in the Eastern District of Wisconsin. It is the original seat in this court. It was created when the Eastern District of Wisconsin was established 150 years ago in 1870. The first person to hold the seat was Judge Miller. He was actually the original district judge for the District of Wisconsin, and when they split Wisconsin in two, he was the first judge for the Eastern District. His son led a Milwaukee law firm called Miller, Mack, and Fairchild, which is today called Foley and Lardner, where I started. The most recent person to hold my seat was, of course, Judge Randa, whom we've also already talked about. For many lawyers of my vintage, Judge Randa was the face of the Eastern District of Wisconsin. He personified public service and what it meant to be a United States District Court judge. He represented this court so well and is, of course, missed by all of us. It is incredibly humbling and an honor to serve in the same seat as those two judges. And I am honored that, Mrs. Randa, you are here joining us today. I was honored to have you attend my swearing-in back in September of 2020, and it's really special to see you here. Thank you for coming. Let's give her a round of applause, please. So much as Dave said, 5 years ago, I stood in the same podium in the same courtroom, addressed a similar crowd during my investiture ceremony for appointment as a bankruptcy judge. In that occasion, those of you may remember, I asked the question, how in the world did we get here? How did an awkward, shy kid from Colby end up standing before you wearing the robe of a bankruptcy judge? It turns out that remains a pretty good question today. If it seemed unlikely in 2017 that I had somehow managed to become a federal bankruptcy judge, it seems infinitely more unlikely that I'm now a district judge. I am not from a family of lawyers or judges. I am the youngest of 4 children from a working class family in northern Wisconsin. And yet, here we are. I have now twice been appointed to positions on the federal bench. So how in the world did that happen? As I related 5 years ago, the whole saga began when on May 13 of 2016, I got an email from a former colleague named Mike Holfinger. And he said he had left Foley and Lardner, was now a bankruptcy judge. And he said, 7th Circuit's taking applications for a bankruptcy judge. You should apply. To which I responded something to the effect of, why would anyone in their right mind who is a partner at Foley and Lardner leave that firm to become a bankruptcy judge.
Probably no answer.
The reply was, fair point. Anyway, I applied, interviewed with this committee from the Seventh Circuit on which Judge Griesbach sat, and managed to, by hook or crook, trick them into selecting me, and I was sworn in late February of 2017. It seemed to be both remarkably unlikely, but a good, successful culmination to my career. But there have been an even greater number of odd twists and turns since that time. Just after I was sworn in March of 2017, I ran into Judge Stadtmuller down in the parking garage, and at that time, the Wisconsin Judicial Nominating Commission had announced that it was taking applications to fill Judge Randa's seat. And Judge Stadtmuller walked up to me and said, "Are you going to apply?" And I just kind of laughed at him because I had just won the lottery and gotten on the bankruptcy court. Like, I'm not one to tempt fate, and I didn't think lightning was going to strike twice. So I just begged off and said, "No, I think I'm fine where I am." That's the first of many odd twists over the last few years. Due to some foibles of our kind of crazy political process, despite the commission's best efforts, Judge Randa's seat went unfilled for 2.5 years. So in June of 2019, I was on a fishing trip in Nakina, Ontario, with my dad and my brothers. And at that time, the seat remained open, and I remember on the long car ride back, it's 800-mile drive from Milwaukee, on the long car ride back, I was talking to my brother Dan, and I said, you know, if they open up applications for that, I may take a shot. And so, as luck would have it, in that summer, the White House started trying to kickstart the process by conducting interviews of potential nominees, people that the White House thought would be acceptable. I was not one of those people. But in September of 2019, the nominating commission restarted its process. The senators insisted that we follow that process again. I applied, and already being a federal judge on the bankruptcy court, I think that was a little bit of a shoo-in, I had enough to get an interview. I interviewed on November 25th of 2019. It was the Monday after opening weekend of deer hunting season. So it was a bit of a sacrifice, but I came down, I interviewed, and my hunting buddies are wondering, why is Brett leaving on Sunday night after opening weekend? Anyway, I came down, I interviewed first thing in the morning, and I did not think it went very well. Those of you who talked to me afterwards would know that. I wasn't exactly, I did not think it went well. It was first thing in the morning. I figured, well, it was interesting to try. Well, it turns out the following day, the commission sent out letters saying that they'd made their recommendation. My copy of that letter didn't arrive for another 2 weeks, although everybody else got their letters, and they were saying, "Did you get your letter?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't." So I figured I was really out of it. But then on December 13th of 2019, I found out I was wrong. I was driving back from bankruptcy court in Eau Claire, and the senators announced they had 4 finalists, 2 of whom had been people the White House had previously interviewed and signed off on. I was not one of them. But my chambers got a call from White House counsel's office, and I ultimately got patched through, and they said, well, if you're still interested, you could come out and interview. But you have to do it before Christmas, and this is December 13th. So I said, if I've come this far, what the hell? So I arranged an interview the following Friday on December 20th. I spent the next several days cramming like it was law school exam time. I got some incredible help from Dave Simon, from Tom Schreiner, Mike Holfinger, Matt Krieger, who was the U.S. attorney at the time. Chief Judge Sykes was very generous with her time. And I went out and I interviewed on December 20th in the Eisenhower office building. It was a beautiful day, and I walked into a room and had a very intense interview for 30 minutes, and all the questions were by people at least 10 or 15 years younger than me. And in contrast to my interview with the nominating commission, this time I thought it went pretty well. And it was a great experience if nothing else. And again, the sun was shining. It may have been raining, but in my mind, it was a glorious day. So I got back, and then we just waited. And of course, the rumor mills were flying. At one point, I heard they picked somebody. If you haven't heard, it's not you. So okay, well, you just wait. And then on January 30th of 2020, I got a call from the Deputy White House Counsel, and they told me that my name had been selected for possible nomination. That is DC speak for you're getting picked, but it's not final yet. I proceeded to fill out more forms than I ever thought I could imagine. The FBI, the Office of Legal Policy, the Senate Judiciary Questionnaire, ABA Questionnaire, and everything started moving forward. On February 26th of 2020, almost 3 years to the day of becoming a bankruptcy judge, the White House announced my nomination. On March 3rd of 2020, the Senate recorded receipt of that nomination, and things looked to be great. The Judiciary Committee of the Senate was moving really quickly on nominations, and usually it was 2-3 months and people were through. And so, wow, this was going great. So the Senate received my nomination on March 3rd. On March 13th, 10 days later, Chief Judge Pepper signed General Order 20-2 regarding COVID-19 virus public emergency. And not as a result of that order, but from the same cause, all Senate Judiciary nomination hearings stopped and were on hold. And it was unclear whether they were ever going to start up again. On June 10th, they ultimately decided they would move forward, and in June, they set up a WebEx. Yes, the Judiciary Committee still uses WebEx for a live stream Judiciary Committee hearing. I was on the first group of 5, and the first group of judicial nominees ever to testify before the Judiciary Committee by video. And we were there ready to go at 9 a.m. our time, 10 a.m. DC time, and at 8:59 our time, somebody comes on and says, "We've had a technical problem, hearing's canceled. We'll let you know if it gets rescheduled." And as one of my colleagues on the panel said, "Well, we're all dressed up and nowhere to go." It wasn't so funny at the time. They rescheduled it the following week, went forward, I dodged the bullets. Ultimately, my nomination was reported favorably out of committee by voice vote on July 23rd. We were heading into the August recess, and of course that was an election year, you may remember. And before the August recess, this is when things started to look up. Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, the last thing he did before the August recess was schedule a cloture vote on my nomination. So I had a little bit of a reprieve. That vote took place on September 8th, floor vote on September 9th. I received the commission on the 10th, sworn in by Chief Judge Pepper on the 11th. And so that all happened. So we started this, I started this with the question of how in the world did I get here? Well, that's a little bit of how I got here. That's the chronology. But there's a different and I think better answer to the question of how I got here. And it's really the same answer I gave 5 years ago. I'm here wearing this robe standing in front of all of you because I've been incredibly fortunate to have the love and support of so many wonderful people and many of you in this room. My parents, my mom and dad, Duke and Connie Ludwig, I owe so much to them. They're hardworking and caring people. I certainly would not be here but for the sacrifices they made for me and my siblings. My dad is dealing with some health issues, had a doctor's appointment today, so he could not be here in person, but hopefully the streaming thing is working, and if it is, love you, Mom and Dad, and thank you. My godparents, my Uncle Tim and Aunt Susie Schmidt, I also want to thank them. I think they're watching by video as well. My siblings, Julie, Dan, and Gary, are up north. Hopefully they're watching. Dan was helping with my dad's doctor's appointment today, but he was hoping to get them back to Colby and get the computer going. And hopefully he and Gary are not arguing politics. But thanks to all my siblings. I, of course, have my own family now. My beautiful wife, Melissa, is over there. Every day she teaches me new things. with her keen intelligence, her extraordinary patience, and her extreme kindness. Thank you. I love you. My daughter Maddie brought down the house 5 years ago with her speech, but she's not here either. She had 2 midterms yesterday at William & Mary, where she's a freshman. Hopefully she's watching. I have more faith in her ability to handle the technology. She's a beautiful, smart young woman, and she's a government major. She seems intent on following both of her parents into law, although she wants to be a federal defender, so we'll see how that works out. And then our youngest son, Ryan, over there in the jury box. He's our little guy, although he's not so little anymore, and his name is Ryan. And he turned 14 yesterday. He may have the best brain in the whole family. He has an incredible memory for detail, so he will be careful what you say to him. He'll remember it. He has an awesome vocabulary. He's extremely kind and caring. And if he can overcome some of the impatience he inherited from me, the sky is the limit for him. Love you, buddy. My mother-in-law, Joan, is also here. A very kind woman, committed to social justice, helping others. Thank you for being here. I'll also briefly thank so many friends, all the people from Foley, Dave and Mike, Jim McEwen, Andy Ronsky. Schreiner, where do I start with you? There are 3 of us here now in robes. Well, Rachel, you don't have your robe on yet. You'll do it soon. All of us can point to Tom as a key part, a key piece of our path to the bench. Without question, he's one of the best lawyers to ever appear in the courtrooms in this courthouse. Thank you, Tom, for all you've done for me and for all of us. I'll thank my judicial colleagues. I've done that before, but thank you all. I won't go in person because we want to move along. My baby judge school classmates, Chief Judge Sykes, I do want to thank you specifically for all the help you did helping me get ready for that White House interview. We are lucky to count the Chief Judge of the 7th Circuit as one of our Eastern District members of our family. My chambers team, surrounding yourself with smart people is a very good idea, as Griesbach can attest, and so can Steve. My courtroom deputies, Melissa Perkins is back. Julie Dreckman, Julie, he's back over there. Chris Braun and Chrissy Bongle filled in from time to time. They're here, I hope. My career clerks, Chris Trapp, she's over there hiding, and Caroline Hogan, who had to deal with a family situation. She's not here, but this summer, Chris, who was my career clerk down in bankruptcy, abandoned me. No, she went back to her true love. She's now Judge Blise's career clerk, but we still miss you. She's a great career clerk. My term clerks, Lisa Eddy is here, Maggie Brown is here, Major Dan Rock is out working for Microsoft in Seattle, but maybe he's online. Parker White is here, Skylar Ruprecht and Maddie Freiberger in the back. Thank you all. You've all been great. I'm truly blessed to know and learn from such wonderful people. With all that, we return to the question, how did it come to pass that I stand here in this robe today? It's because of the love and support of so many of you. I'm damn lucky. Thank you.
Once more, we switch focus, this time to Judge Blise. And I introduce Kate Gale with her remarks on Judge Blise.
Thank you. All right. I understand that I stand between all of us and cocktail hour, so I'm going to do my best not to trigger this trumpet, but still pay respect to Rachel. So I am honored to be up here today in front of all of you to celebrate and honor the achievements of bankruptcy judge Rachel Blise, who I have been really privileged to call a trusted colleague and friend for quite some time now. So I first met Rachel almost a decade ago now on my first day as a baby lawyer, just down the street, I think it's that way, at Foley and Lardner in the litigation department. Rachel had been with the firm at that point for a full year. She was a very seasoned veteran in my mind, and already known as one of those star associates. As I would soon come to learn, she'd been a top-notch law student at Marquette, where she started out taking night law school classes while working a full-time job. Just a hard worker through and through, which remains true to this day. After graduation, Rachel clerked for the Fifth Circuit for Judge Carolyn Deneen King in Houston before returning back to Milwaukee to start at Foley in 2011. At work, Rachel always had an open door for me and for others, even though I darkened it far too often in those early days. With all the questions, I'd be too mortified to ask of Tom or Andy or Jim, and to which Rachel answered with a straight face most of the time. She was a very good listener, a helpful problem solver, and someone I would turn to time and time again over the next decade to bounce ideas off of, to learn from, to commiserate, whether it be on privilege logs or document reviews or our losses, which were few and far between for Rachel, and then to cheer each other on in our victories and our triumphs, both personal and professional. As I watched Rachel grow professionally from a second-year associate up to a senior counsel at Foley, I saw a truly skilled trial lawyer blossom. Her quickness on her feet, her confidence in the courtroom, perhaps stemming from her years of theater in college, a little-known fact, I think, and her ability to parse through really complex issues and convey them to the court, to clients with poise and ease, is really a model that I strive to live up to every single day I'm in court or in a client meeting. But if that were not enough, at the same time, doing all of that, I've watched Rachel become a mother to two beautiful daughters who are here today. And I've seen her balance her life as a mother with that of a litigator and now a judge. In fact, just before coming in here today, Rachel was giving out snacks and getting kids dressed while, 5 minutes later walking into this room. It's pretty remarkable. Rachel is dependable, reliable, and responsible, a true role model, both at home and on the job. And I know her daughters, Abby and Ellie, and her loving husband, Rob, are just as proud of her personal and professional accomplishments as I am, if not more so. I think Ellie's telling us she is. So when Rachel told me she would be leaving Foley and Lardner to become the next bankruptcy judge of the Eastern District, I'm almost done, I promise. I was disappointed to have to say goodbye to such a talented colleague. But I was really happy to see this accomplishment be bestowed on such a deserving individual. And if my past experiences with Rachel have taught me anything, I know without a doubt that the same kindness, patience, and thoughtfulness she brings to our friendship, that she brought to our working relationship, she is going to bring and has brought to the bench. So Rachel, as you might guess, not only made an impression upon me, but also upon many others with whom she crossed paths throughout the years. So bear with me as I share a few sentiments about Rachel from those who worked most closely with her and recognized her as a bright legal mind right from the get-go. Tom Schreiner, who's had a few shout-outs today already, and well-known, I think, in this crowd, told me that Rachel was his law student before he worked with her at Foley. When I asked him how he thinks of Rachel, Tom told me that Rachel is incredibly smart, hardworking, dependable, pleasant to work with, and a terrific person and lawyer. He also added how proud we all are of her and her accomplishments. Ryan Parsons, who I believe is somewhere in this room, a former Marquette Law classmate of Rachel's, Seventh Circuit clerk to Judge Sykes, and Foley alum, actually admitted to me, now I have this in writing, Ryan, that coming in number 2 in his law school class never bothered him. because, because number one was so unattainable. Yes, folks, that was our Rachel over there. Ryan shared that Rachel was head and shoulders above the rest. It was clear even then that she would succeed wherever she went and whatever she did. Ryan also said, I remain immensely grateful to have shared a career journey with Rachel. She's always been there to provide a listening ear, wise advice, and a model to look up to. And even if that model has always seemed a little bit out of reach, I'm a better lawyer today for having Rachel in my life. Andy Ronsky, who has been a mentor to Rachel over the years, had the following to say. I had the tremendous good fortune to work closely with Rachel during her impressive Foley career. I heard from Tom Schreiner, again, second shout out, about this former student of his who was smart as a whip, a tremendous writer, fresh off a Fifth Circuit clerkship, and interested in bankruptcy law. I immediately sought her out and somehow managed to convince her to keep working with me for the next 10 years. What struck me most was how fearless she was in the courtroom, even early in her career. A natural and intuitive trial lawyer, it was simply fun to watch Rachel on her feet. It's that theater degree paying dividends, I think. She could handle the toughest argument, the most experienced opposing counsel, and the most challenging cross-examination. She nearly always won because she was smarter, better prepared, and tougher than anyone else in the room. And wow, could she write. Schreiner always asks if a brief sings. Well, Rachel's always did. When she told me about her decision to seek appointment to the bankruptcy court, I wanted to be sure that she knew that in my eyes, her promotion to partner at Foley was certain and her success inevitable. Rachel chose a different path, and the bar is better for it. Her success is still inevitable, as you have all now seen. I and all of my colleagues will always be proud that Rachel is a part of our Foley family. And finally, District Judge Brett Ludwig also had a few words to share about Rachel. The Seventh Circuit could not have made a better choice for bankruptcy judge than Rachel Blise. She is smart, works hard, writes well, and has excellent judgment. She's also a wonderful, caring, and responsible person. These are the essential qualities of a good judge. I worked with Rachel frequently, now this is Brett, from the time she arrived at Foley following her Fifth Circuit clerkship. She was highly in demand among partners, but I made sure to tab her for my most difficult assignments on my most difficult cases. My primary practice area was reinsurance, and Rachel picked up the intricacies of that arcane area of the law with incredible facility, from captive reinsurance disputes to lawsuits against insurance agents who breached trust by stealing premiums. Rachel showed she not only knew the law, but understood the practical aspects of the business, and she could be counted on to run large portions of these cases on her own. When Brett took over responsibility for all of Harley-Davidson's commercial litigation in the United States, he assigned Rachel primary responsibility for all bankruptcy-related matters at the firm. She tackled those duties skillfully and efficiently, demonstrating her strong legal acumen and top-notch judgment. Then, in 2013, Brett and several other partners tagged Rachel to be lead associate on a huge $350 million corporate dispute in the Delaware Chancery Court. For all intents and purposes, she acted as a partner and co-lead counsel on that case, which was won resoundingly at trial. Of course, she did all of this while simultaneously navigating the challenges of starting her own family. In sum, Rachel is awesome. She was a tremendous lawyer and will be a tremendous judge. And with that, I will close up by congratulating Rachel one more time on this remarkable achievement. It is well-deserved, and our community is all the better for it. Thank you.
Why the Blise has come down. You know, all these remarks about great knowledge bestowed by Tom Schreiner. Is all that I can remember, the guy telling us was that you can do whatever you want as long as you don't screw it up. Or words to that effect. But, then again, I can't remember Ryan Ludwig's name, and I've known him my whole life, so you never know, there could have been more. So now the presentation of the robe to Judge Blise by her husband, Rob, and her daughter, Abigail. Judge Blise.
Thank you all for being here today. In particular, thanks to my colleagues on the Eastern District, Judge Fury from the Western District, and Judge Sykes from the Seventh Circuit. It is an honor to have been selected for this position by other judges. When I first got the call from Judge Sykes letting me know that I had been selected by the Seventh Circuit, I was convinced that it was some sort of elaborate prank. In fact, I had my doubts that it was real until I received the appointment order that Judge Sykes signed. And once I received that order, at least according to my reading of the statute, there are no takebacks. So I'm here to stay, at least for the next 12 and a half years or so. And now I'm supposed to say something profound about how I got here. As I reflected on that question, I couldn't pinpoint any particular event or accomplishment that led me here. In fact, I think I've led so far an utterly ordinary life. I grew up in a typical suburban working family, the only child of a secretary and a factory worker, a family not unlike those who appear before me in the bankruptcy court. I was the first in my family to go to college, and while that was remarkable and important for me and my family, it's not generally the sort of thing that automatically tends to lead to wearing a black robe. No, what really led me here today are the many, many people who taught me, encouraged me, and guided me along the path. We don't have time for me to name them all now, but I do want to mention a few. First, my husband, Rob. It was over dinner one cold winter evening at a charcoal grill that I told him I was thinking of going to law school. He didn't tell me I was crazy or that it would be too hard or too expensive. Instead, he said he would support me no matter what I chose. And he's been telling me that for the last 2 decades since we met. And my 2 beautiful daughters, Abigail, who is 4, she's already very smart. When she talks about my job, she says that I write a lot and I have a big chair. And that pretty much sums it up. Elizabeth is 15 months, and as you can tell, already quite the firecracker, and she keeps us on her toes. And for those of you doing the math, yes, I had her about 4 months into this job, and so let's just say 2021 was an interesting year for me. At Marquette University Law School, I met Dean Joe Kearney. He bears much responsibility for me standing here. He couldn't be here today because he's off doing what he does best, encouraging law students and alumni for the law school. But Dean Kearney taught me to love the law and to appreciate its impact. I clerked with Judge Carolyn King on the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. Judge King approaches cases with unwavering impartiality and incredible logic, and I can only hope to be half the judge that she is. As you all know by now, I was a litigator at Foley & Lardner for nearly 10 years, and I'll name just a few of the many people who helped me from there to here. I can say for certain that I would not be standing here without Tom Schreiner. Many have lamented over the years that Tom should have donned a robe, and I agree that he would be a terrific judge, but I submit that his talent was better, that the legal profession was better served with him as a lawyer at Foley, for he taught countless lawyers, including me, the art of lawyering. His influence is palpable in the local legal community, even just among the people in this room wearing robes. And that's not to mention the hundreds or thousands of students he's taught at the law school. There are no words that can even begin to express my gratitude to Tom. Jim McCune gave me my very first assignment at Foley & Lardner. He also gave me one of my last, and coincidentally, it was for the same client on sort of the same matter, but that's a long story for another day. Jim is not only wicked smart and a great lawyer, he's also one of the nicest human beings that you've ever met. Jim taught me that you don't need to be a jerk to be a good lawyer, and it's too easy for some of us to lose sight of that when mired in a case with a contemptible adversary. Andy Ronsky taught me how to be the fiercest advocate when the law and the facts support an argument, and how to counsel a client when they do not. Most importantly, he taught me that we all make mistakes, which was and still is a very jarring lesson for my type A personality. But he also taught me how to approach them with grace and compassion. Eric Mawson and Brian House taught me that you need to be a little and sometimes a lot neurotic. And what I mean by that is you need an intense attention to detail that demonstrates the seriousness of our work. Michael Small and Matt Lee taught me much of what I know about bankruptcy law before I got this job, which was just enough to make me dangerous. I've learned more now, I hope. Kate Gale taught me what it means to be a truly selfless colleague and friend. She's always willing to lend an ear and offer advice, and everyone needs someone like Kate in their life. Over my time at Foley, I spent thousands upon thousands of hours doing the things that all litigators do: reviewing documents, drafting discovery, writing motions and briefs, counseling clients, taking depositions, and arguing in court. At some point through all of that, I somehow became the sort of lawyer that the Seventh Circuit would want doing this gig. I would not have become that lawyer without my colleagues at Foley. And now I'm here, and the view from my first floor office overlooking Michigan Street is a decided downgrade from my 38th floor office overlooking Lake Michigan. But if it's possible, I got an upgrade in colleagues. The judges on the bankruptcy bench in this state are the best around. They've been so kind and patient as I learn the ropes. We also have an incredible group of people in the clerk's office, led by the exceptional Janet Medlock. As many of you know, Janet is retiring at the end of next month, and I am so sad I wasn't here for more of her tenure. But I can say that I'm a better judge for having served with her at least for a little while. My chambers staff, Angela, Chris, and Davis, bear mentioning, but they all know how awesome they are. And the rest of the people in this building are also pretty great, and among them is Brett Ludwig, who I thought by this point probably thinks I wasn't going to mention him. Brett taught me how to be a great lawyer while he was at Foley, and he's now teaching me how to be a great judge. To the extent I can name one person whose actions, lessons, and guidance were the but-for cause of me standing here today, it would be Brett. First of all, he had the very bad sense to leave the bankruptcy court and move upstairs, but his loss is my gain. Shortly after the Seventh Circuit announced the position that he so unwisely vacated, Brett and I were in a meeting for the Eastern District of Wisconsin Bar Association, and this was in the early summer of 2020, about 3 or 4 months into the pandemic, so of course it was by Zoom. The vacancy was briefly mentioned during the meeting, and suddenly I received a private chat message on Zoom from Brett that simply said, "You should apply." Since these were the early days of the pandemic, I was not good at Zoom yet. I'm still not, but we're going to ignore that. So I had no idea how technologically to respond to Brett at that time using the private chat feature, but even if I had figured that out, I would have no idea substantively how to respond. So I didn't. I stewed on it for a couple of weeks until I finally sought Brett's counsel. But even after I'd essentially ignored him, and side note, it's a bad idea to ignore a message from a federal judge, even if it's on a weird private chat feature on a newfangled program during the height of a worldwide pandemic. It ultimately worked out for me, but it might not for you. Brett gave me all the advice and encouragement I needed to apply. The rest, as they say, is history. I've learned a lot in my career. I still have a lot left to learn. I pledge to all of you that I will use the lessons I mentioned today and those that I didn't have time to mention, and that I will continue to learn from my colleagues on the bench and from the lawyers and parties who appear in my court, and I will do my very best to serve the bankruptcy court. Thank you.
So I appreciate that all of you are probably now calling for the head of the orchestra conductor. Be that as it may, I'm leaving with one last thought before turning you all to the evening at the courthouse and the reception downstairs. And that thought is this: what you've witnessed here today this triple feature, if you will, of investitures of 2 Article 1 judges and Article 3 judge. That's something that certainly years past would never have happened. Not in this courtroom, and I don't think any courtroom across the country. And it's just not, if anybody even would have thought of it, someone would have thought that that would be the most blasphemous thing that they had ever heard. I think it is a tribute to my colleagues on the district court and really the collegiality of all of my colleagues that we come here today to celebrate the investitures of these 3 judges together. And it's also a tribute to all of you for coming out to celebrate with us. Because as important as collegiality is to the administration of justice and the perception of legitimacy of the federal courts, so too is the strength of the bar and the respect that the bar has for that institution. This is the institutions of the courts that have been in this building for almost 125 years. Need all of you. And I'm glad to see all of you. I'm glad we're past the pandemic. We can all come together to celebrate this today, and we're going to continue that downstairs. But I've been admonished by Katie Borowski that all of you need to go get a name tag before doing that. So, again, thank you. And with that, I turn it over to Janet to close the court.